Hi there, welcome to the Behaviour Ninja channel on YouTube, the one-stop channel for teachers who want to hone and perfect their skills in classroom management so that they can join the ranks of the Behaviour Ninjas in their school. My name's Dave, I'm the creator of the Behaviour Ninja app. I work at Consuloed Education as an education consultant. I'm speaking to you from a very snowy northeast of England, early January 2021, start of another lockdown. If you're watching this video in 2030 and you've got absolutely no idea what it feels like to be in lockdown, I'm delighted to hear that. Lockdown's been a tough time for teachers so far, and you know we're in a new one now. Workload for teachers certainly hasn't decreased as a result of being in lockdown. Lots of planning involved, and I know free time is precious to teachers at this time. But if you do have a little bit of time, maybe this would be a useful opportunity. You know, making something good of a bad thing is a great skill for a behaviour ninja to have. So it might be a good opportunity for you to like and subscribe, watch the videos, and maybe return to your classroom sometime in the very near future, I hope, with newfound skills and you know, join the ranks of behaviour ninjas who undoubtedly are already there in your school. Okay, I want to talk to you today about three mantras that were shared with me very fortunately early in my career by a guy called Rob Long, who was a brilliant trainer. Um, they weren't original to him, like all good teachers. We all know how to beg, borrow, and steal wisdom, don't we? And I've spoken to Rob about the mantras frequently, or certainly in the past, and he was, he was honest enough to tell me that he'd pinched them from somewhere else, which I think's cool. Okay, so as I said, these three mantras were shared with me very early in my career, and it was like an epiphany moment. It was, just brilliant for me, and I was delighted that it happened at an early stage. And actually, the best time to learn these mantras is early on in your career, and the second best time to learn them is any other time at all. Okay, so it doesn't matter what stage of your career you're at, these three mantras will help you with classroom management. And in fact, they will help anybody who works with young people and challenging individuals. And I would suggest also, if you're a parent with a challenging child, then these three mantras are really useful to you, and they're especially useful if you are reflective about your own practice. And of course, behavior ninjas are always reflective practitioners. So the three mantras then. The first mantra that Rob shared with us all those years ago was analyze, don't personalize. Now, there are times, of course, when individual children, complex needs and challenging children, can say things that sound extremely personal to us and about us. Um, there are times when groups of students can kind of peck away at our resilience over time, and we can start to be feeling like, is this about me? Am I cut out for this job? Can I do this? The answer to can I do this is yes, of course you can. Am I cut out for this job? Yes, of course you can. All you need is some skills and knowledge, and you're in the right place to get that stuff right now. Okay, so anyway, at those times it can feel very personal to us. The problem with that is when we allow that to feel personal, that starts to tap into some of our really kind of primitive emotions, and it can be frustration and despair and anger at times. And as soon as that happens, we're really kicking into that fight, flight, freeze way of thinking, and that's not helpful for us at that time. So for that reason, it is far better to analyze rather than personalize. Um, and so, what do I mean by that? Well, we have to think in a way that allows us to remain calm and get curious about behavior. And, those really important questions that we ask about behavior, why is it happening? What is the function? What is the context? There's a truism about behavior that applies to many things in life, and it's this: understanding is hard. Once we understand, action is easy. Okay, so understanding the function, why is this behavior happening, is a much better way to go. And of course, even though children can sometimes say very personal things to us, the underlying driver of that might be, for example, not always, but for example, anxiety about being in the class, a desire to get out, a desire not to demonstrate that they can't read, they can't do the things that other people in the class can do. And so, the default setting is to become confrontational, aggressive, disrespectful, whatever it is. So we analyse rather than personalise. Okay. Second of the three mantras, then, fight fire with water. Um, so a statement for you to ponder when we think about fight fire with water would be, in any conflict situation, in any interaction of that kind, the most mature person in that interaction takes the first opportunity to turn down the heat. That should always be you in your classroom. I don't think any teachers are going to argue with me on that one. So we should always be looking to de-escalate things, and I'll certainly expand on that at a different time, when perhaps I'll do a video on de-escalation skills of both children who are just belligerent and children who are in crisis, because we need different strategies for different situations, of course. So fight fire with water is your second mantra, and a teacher that I worked with, again, fortunately early in my career, when I was establishing my approach to teaching and classroom management, a gentleman called Bob Pendleton, and he was a fantastic behaviour ninja without a shadow of a doubt. And when I shared this idea of fight fire with water with Bob, he very wisely said to me, "That's great, Dave, but some fires need a blanket, and some fires need foam, and some fires need powder." And I thought that was a really brilliant statement to make, because actually at the time we were working in a school for children with complex needs, and what Bob was saying to me was there are lots of different ways to dampen down the flames, and what works for one fire might not work for another fire, and what works for one kid might not work for another kid. And I think that was absolutely brilliant. It was just an amazing piece of advice that I pondered and thought about for years, and still do. So thanks to Bob for that. And I think that's really useful for us to know, and it means that you as teachers get left the space to use your professional judgment. And I think that absolutely crucial that we trust teachers to have that perspective, and to use their own professional judgment when they're dealing with situations, rather than saying in situation A you must do B. That's never going to work. That's not the kind of consistency that works effectively in schools. Okay, so that's your second mantra. So we've got analyse, don't personalise. We've got fight fire with water. There's the first two. The third one, the problem is the problem, not the child. I'll put these in the description later on for you, so you don't have to kind of scribble anything down at this point. The problem is the problem, not the child. Okay, again, this is a really useful piece of advice, I think, and I've found it useful actually when I'm dealing with post-event situations. So there's been a crisis, there's been a problem in class, perhaps somebody's been hurt, or something unfortunate's been said, or something's been damaged, whatever it is, we've had the crisis. A crisis is a bad situation, and it's made worse if we don't find some useful nugget in amongst that. If the child can step out of a crisis situation having learned something new and having raised the bar for them, then we've gleaned as much of a positive out of that situation as we can. If we don't do that, it's a lost opportunity. Behaviour ninjas don't miss out on opportunities for children to learn better ways to manage their behaviour, and better ways to make choices about their behaviour. So for example, with the problem is the problem, not the child, if I'm dealing with a post-crisis situation where I'm talking to one-to-one with a child, I could use a solution-focused approach, and that's something I'll discuss in another video. But often, using my professional judgment, I might decide to have a problem-focused approach, because that will work more effectively with the child, because I know them and we have the right relationship, and so on and so forth. If I'm doing that, then it might be that I'll sit in a chair with the child, not facing each other, because that's a little bit too confrontational perhaps when they're just coming down from a crisis and they're just steadying. So I might have them at an angle, and another chair in between, and I'll write the problem down. The classroom has been damaged, for example. Put it on the chair between the two chairs where we are, and we'll talk about the problem, and that sort of separates the problem from the child very effectively. So that's one example of how you can use that third mantra, the problem is the problem, not the child. But it's also about how we focus and how we view, and our perspective. And I've already said before that perspective is crucially important for behaviour ninjas. So the idea then of looking at the problem in that way is really useful if we want to solve it. So what do I mean by that? Well, a typical example. I'll sometimes get teachers saying to me, if I'm going into a school to observe a child and offer some behavioural advice, for example, I'll get teachers saying, "God, he's absolutely manic. He's crackers. He can't control himself. He's unteachable. He's unmanageable in the classroom." And I'll ask a few questions, of course, that's my job, and we might get down to maybe a specific incident where he has what we call lagging skills, for example. So it might be, when he comes in from break, he's absolutely manic, charging around the class. Now, I drill down further because the problem is the problem. Forget that he's a manic child. What you're saying to me, the problem that you currently have is this boy cannot manage the transition from break time to your classroom. That is a problem that can be solved. Somebody saying to me, this child is manic. That's not a problem I can solve. This child's out of control. That's not a problem. If you say to me, this child is struggling to manage transition from break time to the classroom environment and classroom expectations, loads of ways we can solve that. But it's only happened because we've been curious. We've asked why, what's the function, what's the context, what is the problem. We've drilled down, we've got that curiosity about behavior. Okay, so I've got this child who can't manage the transition, so maybe I build in some kind of new routine from where there's some like an element of countdown from break time to lessons. Maybe there's a routine of meet and greet at the door to my classroom where we do some calming activities for everybody, but particularly beneficial for this child. There are so many different ways. Maybe I give this child a bit of a wind down break between the two, where he can kind of settle his emotional state, which might be heightened by being outside and all the kind of stimulus that's going on from that point. So loads of solutions, tons more we could talk about in that particular instance, but we've only got there by focusing on the problem rather than the child in that sense. Okay, so those are three mantras that I think are absolutely fantastic. I've certainly benefited from using them and still do to this day. So, please have a bit of a think about them. Any comments, you know what to do. There's also like, subscribe, notifications, and all that kind of stuff that's below. So, feel free to do that. And of course, as I've said, this is a great time for when teachers have precious moments in time to develop their skills. This would be a great time to share with teachers that who can like and subscribe to the channel and access the videos. The only other thing I'm going to say before I finish then, via emails and messages and so on, I've had a few people get in touch with me talking about will I be reviewing books and so on, and recommend books in the future. I don't plan to review any books around behaviour management, in the sense that I think it's a little bit unfair, because there are lots of good ways of managing behaviour. There are lots of good books out there. Some of them won't particularly resonate with me. Okay, and I won't put, I'll read a book and think, well, I won't do that. I'll never do that. That doesn't fit with how I do things. Might be a great book, doesn't really do it for me. I'm not going to kind of review that book, because I think that's unfair. Other people will find it really valuable, where perhaps, in absolute honesty, I don't. What I will do, though, if I find a book that does resonate for me and I think, yeah, that fits really nicely, then I'll certainly let you guys know and have a little bit of a chat about that book. Not a review as such, but a little bit of a conversation about it. I do have a few books that I particularly like, and I'm currently working through, and I'm liking what I'm reading, and they really kind of illustrate in ways, because the authors are different to each other and have different approaches and beliefs and perspectives, but they're certainly books that I'm quite fond of, and think are really useful and practical, and they resonate for me absolutely crucially. That's important. So at the moment, I'm currently reading Running the Room by Tom Bennett. Definitely an author who polarizes opinion, has to be said. I think this is a fantastic book, what I've read so far. I'm just currently scribbling notes down about this book, but it's certainly something that I think would be valuable to people. And so maybe at some point in the future, I'll do a little bit on that. Other books that I really like, and again, another trainer that I've seen is Rob Plevin. This is Take Control of the Noisy Class. Again, fantastic book. I have read that cover to cover, and really like it. And Rob has taught in some pretty tough settings, and it's very real and gritty and useful stuff. And then another book that I quite like, and again I might chat about at some point, and I know this has become very popular in a lot of schools. When the adult changes, everything changes. This is Paul Dick's. I really like that book. There is a book that Paul wrote that I like even more. That's a very worn copy of that lives in my bag that I take into schools. So maybe I'll have a look at that and share information about that with you at some point. But anyway, that's for the future. Thanks for watching the vid. Please do subscribe and like, and comment below, and I'll reply. Okay, thanks a lot. Take care. See you again soon.